happenings at the time and to understand the basis for which a unitary state became imperative, as it were. It does not necessarily then amount to the fact that somebody who was against a unitary system was fighting tyranny. What was a tyranny? PDA, as it were, under Nkrumah, was necessary because of the kind of hands that were in bed with seductive colonial powers to ditch this country. Today, those people are of a worse character than what they describe as tyranny under Nkrumah. Those people, they are of a worse character than what we saw in Nkrumah, which we describe as acts of tyranny. I have read my political literature right, so I know what I am talking about. You see, the frivolity of political ideologies trivialized in Africa is not helping us in any way. Why can't we have an objective and balanced views of situations? Nkrumah suffered over 300 bombings, okay, in less than 2 years because of the happenings of so-called political players who were not interested in the development of Ghana and Africa. So if Nkrumah was a tyrant, he was a tyrant for the development of Africa, and we need such tyrants. If I get the opportunity, I will want to be one of these tyrants who will live up to the development of Africa and the common good of our progress. I do not know the basis for which Daily Guide would suggest that Bafo Akoto fought tyrant. They could have captured him better. He did well. A good statesman. His contribution to the development of Ghana, you cannot take it away from him. A proud prince, a proud ruler of, you know, the Akan tradition and the Ashanti people. We respect and we salute him for that. A proud contributing factor to the kind of political system I belong to. Yes, I am proud of that. I am proud today and tomorrow of Akoto. But he did not fight any tyranny. We must not mislead the public. We have younger ones watching us. We have SHS leaders watching us. We must not, for purposes of certain expediencies, mislead the public. Our history must be written well, and it must be spoken well, and we must propagate it well. The happenings, as it were, who will go and receive a handshake for a bomb and sit aloof? The first principle of life is self-preservation. So Nkrumah should have been a coward for you to kill. People took $30 million then in 1962 to betray Nkrumah and Africa. When some of them eventually had the opportunity to rule this country, what did we not see? Where did the conspiracies and betrayals lead this country to? Those who even claimed they were academics, what was their practical contribution to the development of this country when they had the opportunity to rule? In fact, A-level holders and O-level holders and people with military background like Achampon did very well, perfectly well than some of the good learned academics we had who ruled this country. So if you now come and write Bafo Akoto fought tyranny, it tells you clearly that the editor or whosoever authored this particular piece on the Daily Guide, okay, acted in ignorance of literature. He acted in ignorance of even grammar and acted in ignorance of the political stories of this country. I think that some of the things, the revolutionary paths of Nkrumah are needed today in Africa. We need them. We need them. Because where things are happening under multi-party democracy today, and if the curb was for a unitary state, so be it. All we need, the byproduct of leadership the African people need, is development and true development. That's all. So I think that Daily Guide should watch it again. Daily Guide should watch this again. He contributed immensely to our democracy. He contributed immensely to our political fabric, but it does not amount to the fight against tyranny. I have not seen any proof of tyranny in the story there which they have written. But if what was happening was the actions of tyrants, we need many more tyrants who will build factories. KOD, we need many more tyrants who will build more concrete roads. We need many more tyrants who will expand hydropower production so that energy security can be secured. We need more such tyrants. I'm done.
Elvis, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I mean, you are receiving class from Mr. Mensah. But thank you for that succinct delivery. Yes, that's good. Honorable Inusa, I won't talk again. Fuseni, please talk again.
Yes, I said I won't talk again. Because yes, sometimes it's just too nauseating. Yes, because and then Master, you are a senior journalist. Bafo Koto fights tyranny. It's not a story written by anybody. In the Daily Guide, it's not written by anybody. It's not credited to somebody. So I don't know how we're going to go about it.
Evans was right to say that, because if it's not written by anybody, then we can attribute it to the newspaper.
No, it's
it's the newspaper. So.
They did a poor job. The Daily Guide did a poor job.
Yeah, and it's not also an editorial.
Yeah,
it's not an editorial. There's no author. So what do we say?
Yeah, it's for them. They own
okay,
it.
so we have been invited to talk about Bafo Koto.
Yes, please.
As a lawyer, Bafo Koto is an important case. The Akoto case. Akoto in the matter of Akoto. It's an important
and 7 others.
And 7 others. It's an important case. It's an important case because it was a test on the constitutionality of the arrest of Bafo Koto, the constitutionality of the passage of the PDA,
1963,
and the test on whether or not Parliament, as then constituted, had power under the Constitution to pass PDA. That was a test. Bafo Koto, as a lawyer, exposes the inadequacies in protecting the fundamental rights of people. Bafo Koto also exposes the absoluteness of power if it is vested in one person, and that even the courts cannot do anything about that. Bafo Koto leads us into what we call today constitutionalism. Whether there is constitutionalism, and that is limits on the exercise of governmental power.
Absolutely.
And so Bafo Koto is relevant to the 1969 Constitution, as the 1969 Constitution is relevant to the 1979 Constitution, as the 1979 Constitution is relevant to the 1992 Constitution. In fact, about 90% of what is contained in the 1979 Constitution is in the 92 Constitution. So Ghana did not start with a Bill of Rights. So now we have a Bill of Rights. Because there was nowhere you could refer to in the Constitution in 1960 that this was your right and that you could not. So let's leave it. So Bafo Koto's claim to fame are two. The infamous establishment of the National Liberation Movement, which was generally called Matimehu, excluding myself, which at that time the Ashantis and the Bronx were led by a party called the Ghana Party. The Ghana Party. And Bafo Koto, Tinuhu, he and his followers remove themselves from elements led by Buzia and the Donquest. So yes, you can even say in one vein that Bafo Koto was probably the beginning of the movement of Ashantis as Ashantis to establish a hegemony within the political space. Before that, the Ashantis were led by the Bunus through the K.A. Buzia and then the Achims. They were not. So Bafo Koto was the first major attempt. That's why I'm not surprised that the guy that describes him as a true blue Ashanti, even though he says he's not a tribalist. Meanwhile, he describes him as a true blue Ashanti. Clearly, immediately you begin describing somebody as a blue-blooded person, then we are getting into racist arena. But you say he fought tyranny. Bafo Koto was actually a tyrant. He was not a chief. He was a linguist. He was a chief linguist. He was the head of the linguists. He was a linguist. So the Ashanti spoke through him.
Ochiame
Bafo Koto was a linguist. Now, so he decided that the Ashantis will not have anything to do with the CPP. He and the Ashantis, those who followed him, will not have anything to do with the CPP. And the CPP will not be entertained in the Ashanti region. I mean, and if people are listening, this was a person who was highly intolerant of other political views, highly intolerant of other people's political views, and was prepared to use unreasonable force, including the elimination of people who were simply thinking otherwise in the Ashanti region. Look at what a British wrote about him, the assistant secretary of to the colonial office. Look at what he wrote about him. So little is known about the internal politics of the NLM that it is difficult to know the importance of this core determined people or the kind of control exercised by the Ashantihini over them. It is, however, clear that they have a fair amount of dynamite at their disposal and presumably can obtain fresh supply by theft from the mine. So they had dynamite for bombing purposes, and they could secure supplies by theft, by stealing from the mines. They contain a number of packs who are prepared to use knives and arms to precision, and arms of precision, guns. Reports were current in Kumasi a fortnight ago that the NLM had been smuggling rifles and machine guns, and that there were other reports that small bands of people were being trained with the object of sending them to Accra to attack and possibly murder the Gold Coast ministers.
Vigilantism.
Well, he was an Al-Qaeda before Al-Qaeda, the Al-Qaeda thing came in vogue. His sole purpose was to cause confusion by the kidnapping and killing of ministers and the destabilization of Ghana. That was his sole purpose. Yes, that is different from we lawyers, our treatment of Ria Koto.
Of course.
Within the contemporary political space.
In reference to habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus and whatnot. That's different.
That's different, yeah.
But the activities of Bafo Koto were a veritable threat to national security. And that was the basis upon which PDA number 5 was issued. That was the basis. They had killed many people. Many people in Kumasi, including Kwame wife. Many people in Kumasi. They simply did not. Recently, I was talking to somebody who says that probably people don't know. But that is why sometimes I don't understand the MPP. which came into existence, the UP, I mean the UP is the forebase of the NPP, which came into existence by the coming together of the Northern People's Party and the Ghana Party, and I think a representative of the NLM in Parliament. Now, and at that time that they came together, the Northern People's Party had the highest number, even though they consigned Dombo, even though they assigned the leadership of that party to Buzia, who became the minority leader of opposition. Now, so let's get this straight. First of all, Bafra Koto was not of the UP tradition.
Okay.
Bafra Koto was an Ashanti hegemonist. He worked in the chief's palace. He thought that no other person was fit to rule than the Ashantis. He did not think that it was right for Nkrumah to be ruling this country and doing what he was doing. He sought by force of arms, terror and threats, including bomb throwing, to destabilize the system. He has succeeded in killing many people, and his activities were centered in Kumasi. He has succeeded in killing many people and wounded many others, until his activities were considered as being a security threat. And the law was passed by Parliament in 1958 and used the 5th time. He was not the first. And used the 5th time. I mean, if you read Bafra Koto, you will not fail to read cases of PD, prevention detention activities in England, in Anderson and Liversedge or Liversedge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Liversedge.
Yes, you will not fail to read that case too. So, and this PDA was not a creation exclusively. It was not new to Ghana. At that time, India, which was also a newly independent state,
We're using it.
were using it.
Yeah.
And even as we speak, some countries still have it. Even after the overthrow of Nkrumah,
Some countries, including the United States of America and Britain,
still have it.
Yes, you and that's where we
Well, so I don't want to go that far.
So we know, let's tell the public.
You know, now,
in the US and the-
and when they even overthrew Nkrumah,
Yeah.
PDA changed name.
To PDC.
PDC.
PDC, yes.
Yeah.
Prevention, detention, custody.
Yeah.
preventive,
Protective
Custody.
law. So that's what happened. And so
The nomenclature just changed.
it just changed. So for us, yes, one can see an indecent, unholy attempt to do right history and resurrect past criminals who manifested themselves in acts against the state in a positive light. But you see, the greatest magic ever performed by the white man was to discover pen, paper, and ink.
Absolutely.
Because these records are there. The records are there. You can't tell us what you want. If you get up today and go to the museum, if you go to the British Council and have access to their library, or if you go to the Commonwealth Office in London, you are going to read all about the activities of Bafra Koto. All about the activities. And if it were modern day distance, the people they arranged in court for espionage have not done a quarter for, no, I say espionage, high treason, have not done a quarter
The things that
of the things that Bafra Koto did. A quarter, but he was just being prevented.
Right. Honorable, thank you very much. You know, I don't think you need to travel all the way to England to get books. We have one here in Ghana.
Well, okay.
we're going to sell the books. But I'm happy because the conversation has always been from the legal perspective, as opposed to the political perspective. So I'm happy we're having this conversation today.
And there's the decision in the Balfour Koto that the Constitution, the law was constitutional. The Parliament had the right to pass it. Was made by Kosa CJ.
Yeah.
Who was the Chief Justice then? Kosa.
Kosa.
And then Valère.
Justice Valère.
And Akomi.
Yeah.
Akiomi.
Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, first, let me do this, you know. The art of writing, the introduction of the art of writing can never be the white man's magic.
Okay.
You see the Garmanches Palace. You see the Garmanches Palace. If you're driving from the Garmanches Palace towards the Carnation Polyclinic, look on the walls, and you would find that the guy started writing, communicating with writing, long before formal education was introduced from Europe. Long before. In fact, the methods of writing and so on is on the wall. You can read it. You can see it for yourself. Up to today, the Garmanches Palace. You understand? So, let's give some credit to ourselves. Indeed, even the art of bathing, taking a bath with soap and so on, was introduced to Europe from Africa. The historical record is clear. You understand? So let's give some credit, you know, to ourselves. Kwame, I don't do this. I don't come to the studio with papers and books and so on. But today, I've been compelled to come to the studio with this book. And as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the best books that I've read. Incidentally, I wrote the introduction to this book myself. Now, this is a book which is titled Fight Back, a response to anti-Nkrumah's provocations. And you should see the people who worked together to put this book together. This book was authored by a number of people, including Kofi Amponsa. And Kofi Amponsa was one of our topmost security operatives who worked under Chapo, Soviet trade, and so on. Kofi Amponsa, well known in the intelligence services, is one of the authors of this book. The other person who contributed to writing this book is Michael Nunu, a well-known academic. Michael Nunu has economic background and so on. Then there is also Eko Nelson and Michael Jamra and Trinchie Opoku. These are the people who contributed to produce this book. Published by Militant Publications, under and compiled by the Socialist Forum of Ghana. And I think that any and everybody who wants a true account of Ghanaian history needs to read this book. The facts are clear. It provides the alternative analysis and the facts of our history up to 1966. Fantastic book. Kwame.
Yes, sir.
You see, facts don't lie. Alhaji Musa Fuseni read a portion of a memorandum which was written by a British Assistant Secretary of State in charge of the Gold Coast. But he read a small portion. I'm going to read an expanded portion of that which is captured in this book, and it is interesting. This memorandum was not written by a CPP activist. It was written by a British colonial officer. And there's no doubt that the British colonial establishment was biased in favor of the UP tradition.
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable with the CPP because of the CPP's commitment to revolutionary politics, to socialism, and so on. And listen to what they wrote. I'll read the whole thing.
Sure.
I hope I will have the time.
Yes.
It says, this is from the book, this is from page 80 of this book, Fight Back, and it says, their claim, however, that the NLM, the National Liberation Movement, was a peaceful nationalist movement until the infamous incident, does not fit with the facts and is an attempt to rewrite history. R.J. Val, the Assistant Secretary and Head of West Africa Department B at the Colonial Office, gave one of the first independent assessments of the NLM, that is the National Liberation Movement, after his visit to the Gold Coast in 1955. And mark the date. I'll come back to this date. In a memorandum, Constitutional Developments in the Gold Coast, reference CO 554/805, number 22. On his visit to the Gold Coast, he wrote this, and listen very carefully. So little is known about the internal politics of the NLM that it is difficult to know the importance of this core of determined people or the kind of control exercised by their Santehene over them. It is, however, clear that they have a fair amount of dynamite at their disposal, and presumably can easily obtain fresh supplies by theft from the mines. They contain a number of thugs, T-U-G-S, the NLM. It says they contain a number of thugs who are prepared to use knives and arms of precision. Reports were current in Kumasi a fortnight ago that the NLM had been smuggling in rifles and machine guns. The NLM, the Democratic Organization, had been engaged in the smuggling of rifles and machine guns. And there were other reports that small bands of people were being trained with the object of sending them to Accra to attack and possibly murder Gold Coast ministers. They were being trained in Kumasi to come into Accra to commit murder of ministers. In paragraph 12, R.J. Val writes, and this is a very important part of the report. It's a very important part of the report. Listen. In paragraph 12, R.J. Val writes, it is possible that Dr. Nkrumah's peaceful approach may lead to the resolution of the differences between the NLM and the CPP on constitutional matters. I want to repeat that again. It says, it is possible that Dr. Nkrumah's peaceful approach, when the NLM was mobilizing machine guns, rifles, and dynamite and so on, Nkrumah was using peaceful means. It is possible that Dr. Nkrumah's peaceful approach may lead to the resolution of the differences between the NLM and the CPP on constitutional matters. Nevertheless, he concluded ominously that it is quite possible that the core of determined young men will take to the forest and engage in guerrilla warfare from there if other methods fail. The idea then of a peaceful LNM before the EY Bafu incident, which took place some 6 months after R.J. Val's memorandum, is fanciful and pure fiction. Listen carefully. This is the idea of a peaceful NLM is fanciful and pure fiction, raw fiction. My brother, you see, a lot of people talk a lot of nonsense because they don't know our history. Why? The NLM was actually formed between 1954 and 1955.
55, yeah.
This date is important. This year is important. Why is it important? Because at this time, Ghana was a fully fledged multi-party democratic dispensation.
It's not
So the NLM could not have been formed to fight tyranny. Ghana was a fully fledged multi-party democratic dispensation by 1954-1955. The NLM was formed as a purely Ashanti nationalist, bigoted organization. You see, the history is important and people should learn the history. Bafo Akoto actually was the first person to issue a fatwa. Fatwa in Ghana. He made a declaration that it would amount to betrayal of Ashanti if Ashantis continue to remain in the Convention People's Party.
Yeah.
And that all Ashantis needed to retreat to Kumasi to join the NLM to fight the CPP. So for him, the battle against the Convention People's Party was an Ashanti jihad. It was an Ashanti jihad. Okay? One of the things that the National Liberation Movement proposed was Ghana should become a federation. They didn't want a unitary Ghana. They wanted a federated Ghana. Do you know the reason? Their claim was that cocoa was the mainstay of the Ghanaian economy. That Ashanti had gold and so on. Okay? And that they were opposed to this wealth of Ashanti being shared with others. So we should declare a federation so that Ashanti will become an independent state within a federation, so that Ashanti can have the benefit of the gold and cocoa that is just growing. This was the rationale for the formation of the NLM. So to claim that the NLM did something to me, I'm supposed to come from Apam in the central region. What do I have to do with NLM? If you come from Pisiga, what have you got to do with NLM? This was the rationale for the formation of the NLM. Now today, history and our current conditions shows us how foolish the NLM project was. Because today, oil, which is becoming the mainstay of the economy, oil and gas, is not in Kumasi. It's not in Ashanti. It's in the Western region.
And there's better gold elsewhere than it is in the
And today, even in Bolgatanga, there's so much gold.
Yeah.
Today, look at how much gold is being, how much cocoa is being produced in the Western region and so on. So that whole federation project was a foolish enterprise. And today, nobody in the Dankwa Buzia tradition would have the effrontery to be calling for federation. Today, who in the Dankwa Buzia tradition will follow Bafo Akoto in calling for federation of Ghana? Who? And yet, they were ready to kill for federated Ghana. They killed, they maimed, they did all kinds of things. Master, you know something? I listened to the testimony of Dr. Tony Edu. And Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the feeling I experienced, and anybody should feel the same way. Dr. Tony Edu told the story in Ashanti New Town when he was a small boy, where a woman suspected of being sympathetic to the Convention People's Party was caught by these NLM elements. And they spread her legs, they opened her thighs, they spread her legs, and pounded her private part with pistol, woman, until she died. Are these Democrats? These people are worse than the people Osama bin Laden commanded. They are far worse than the people Fode Sanko commanded. That's how they killed the woman. And they killed the woman because allegedly she was sympathetic to the Convention People's Party. Being sympathetic to the Convention People's Party was a crime punishable by death, slow death. These are the people. These are the people we are talking about. And they're wasting our years. Wasting our years. We so-called fight for democracy and rule of law. This is rule of law? Abba, please respect us a little. How can this be rule of law? Master, listen to me. Listen to me. They started the violence, the killing, the maiming, the bombing, the assassinations and so on in 1954. It took 4 years, 4 clear years before the Preventive Detention Act was passed. So for 4 years, Nkrumah tolerated these mad men and women who were killing and maiming, who wanted a federated state, who wanted all the gold money and the cocoa money for Ashanti alone. Nkrumah tolerated them for 4 years before the Preventive Detention Act was passed. The Preventive Detention Act, you know when it was passed? It was passed after the murder of Kobodusai's sister. Yeah. Kobodusai was Minister of Interior. They killed the sister. Now, not many people know that Nkrumah, as head of state of Ghana, was banned from entering Ashanti. Can you imagine? That some people, part of Ghana, Ashanti, they banned Kwame Nkrumah from entering Ashanti. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Can you believe? Nkrumah was living in Accra, near the Malata market, in a brick house, burnt brick house, near the Malata market. He was there with his mother, old lady, Madam Yaniba. They went and bombed the house. Nkrumah was in the house. They bombed the house to rust. Look, why Nkrumah didn't die early is still a miracle for most of us. They bombed the house near the Malata market. Madam Asantua, she now lives in Adenta. Pan-African Television has interviewed her before. If you have the tape, play it. Let people hear the Madam Asantua. Small, innocent schoolgirl went to the Accra Sports Stadium for the celebration of the independence anniversary. They bombed the school children. They bombed them. I'll be very happy if our production team will show the interview with Madam Asantua. They bombed her. They bombed her to rust. Today, Madam Asantua has no leg. She is still in pain after that bombing. Look at the innocent school girl at Korongubu who was given a bouquet of flowers and shattered to death. Look at Sergeant Ametewe, who attempted to assassinate the Osadifo in the Flagstaff house. Nkrumah was walking to his office. Sergeant Ametewe opened fire on Nkrumah. He wanted to kill Nkrumah. You understand? In the process, Salif Udagati was hit by a bullet in his head. He died.
I think that's one of the murder cases in Ghana.
You understand? He died.
Yeah.
Today, his wife, Salif Udagati's wife, is still alive. She lives in Kanda. His son has just retired from the Ghana Armed Forces and so on.
Yes.
So these people, what right do they have to be talking about democracy? What right do they have to be talking about democracy? These people who could capture a human being, Boy Moses, a human being called Boy Moses.
Put him in a cage.
One of Nkrumah's confidants, they captured him, They put him in a cage like a monkey. They tied the cage to a moving vehicle and drove him through the principal streets of Accra. They are talking about democracy and fighting against tyranny and so on. I can't believe this. Why? Look, some of us are still alive. These books will be available forever and so on. The history of Ghana cannot be distorted. They will not be allowed to distort the history of Ghana. Democracy and what? These people. And you see, after trying to kill Nkrumah, after trying to kill his mother, after trying to kill his ministers, after killing innocent school children and so on, they expected Kwame Nkrumah to go with them with a bouquet of flowers and kiss them on both cheeks. It would never happen. Why? India introduced the Preventive Detention Act before Ghana introduced the Preventive Detention Act. As we speak, right now, the Patriots Act that the U.S. has enacted, is it not the same as the Preventive Detention Act? And yet, these elements are ready to see America as a democratic society, but they will not see Ghana and Nkrumah as a democratic society. Today, as we speak, the United Kingdom, Britain, don't they have laws which are the same as the Preventive Detention Act? And yet, these fictitious Democrats, they see nothing wrong with Britain, but they see everything wrong with Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. In any case, when they were fighting against Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who were their closest allies? Their closest ally to the West was Ufe Buani. And the Ufe Buani story is interesting. Massa, first of all, Ufe Buani, as president of La Côte d'Ivoire, of Ivory Coast, was a member of parliament in France and a French citizen. Ufe Buani presided over a one-party state. They had no problem with Ufe Buani's one-party state. He was their ally, he was their friend. They were hobnobbing with him and helping him. Their friend to the east was Eyadima. Eyadima was running a one-party state. They had no problems with the one-party state that Eyadima was running. They were going there for money, they were going there for weapons and so on to overthrow the Nkrumah government. The only one-party state they didn't like was Nkrumah's one-party state.
There was no one-party state then.
Master,
There was no, yes.
later, they said that later, they post, done that.
Yeah, okay.
So when they said they didn't like one-party state, what we're actually saying that they didn't like one-party state with Nkrumah as the head. And that if there was a one-party state with an Eyadima, they were happy. If there was a one-party state with Ufe Buani, they were happy with it. These hypocrites who talk at both sides of their mouth. You know, it is not in their interest to be raising these issues. Because anytime they raise these issues, the true history will surface. So if I were them, if you know that you have such a sordid past, you hide it. You don't proclaim it. You see, I've heard you people who are studying law and who are distinguished lawyers like my brother here. So let's separate the history from the law and so on.
We can't separate them.
They are inseparable. Justice Banle was not wrong. Sir Akukosa was not wrong. Justice Akimi were not wrong when they upheld the constitutional right of the people of Ghana to make laws which fight against terrorism.
Yeah.
They were not wrong.
You were not wrong, yes.
We are having this situation because unfortunately over a long period of time, we allowed the practice of law, the teaching of law and so on, to be dominated by the right wing in this country. That is why the law has become what it is. That is why the law is interpreted in the manner in which it is interpreted. And that is why, for such a purely partisan meeting aimed at idolizing terrorists and gangsters and thieves, our Chief Justice, who is supposed to be non-partisan and neutral, will sit in such a meeting. We have allowed it. It is time for the left in Ghanaian politics to realize that every place, every institution, every idea, anything and everything is contestable. We should contest for everything. We should encourage people to become lawyers. We should encourage people to become engineers. We should encourage people to go into all the spaces. We should encourage people to acquire all the knowledge. We should contest every inch. We should contest every idea. The time has come to mobilize like never before. Because that is the only way to save this country. This is the time to mobilize like never before. To make sure that Ghana does not fall into the hands of the kinds of people who, through their tribal bigotry and short-sightedness, form the National Liberation Movement. We cannot tolerate any National Liberation Movement anymore. It is in the same vein that we have to take a principled position against the Homeland Study Group. What the Homeland Study Group is doing in the Volta region is exactly what the NLM sought to do in Ashanti. And we should not tolerate it. Yeah. We should aim at building a unitary Ghanaian state. We should aim at building a unitary Ghanaian state that takes an interest in working with other African states to establish that political union of African states, which was envisaged by the 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945. We have no option. We should go back to 1945. Take that resolution, which was passed by that Congress of Africans throughout the world, including George Padmore, including Du Bois, including Marconi, including Osadifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. That is our guiding post to prosperity and power for the African people. And we need to revisit 1945. We need to revisit 1945 to stay in our present 2021 and to walk into the future with confidence, to build that new Africa in which no child will go to bed on an empty stomach. We can do it, and we will do it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. Well, so for those of you asking for the book,
be careful with that copy.
This copy is yours,
Yes.
Right, so it's very affordable, actually. I'm selling it, but I'll give you Justice Apia's number. Call Justice Apia now so that you can get a copy, wherever it is that you are, whether you're in Tamale, Freedom Bookshop as well. No, but I'm sure a lot of people would like to order.
And if you read the inside, you find the relevant numbers,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
for the bookshop.
Yes. Yeah, but for now, we'll be leaving a copy here at Pan-African Television as well. So,
you see,
yeah.
That's why I've decided that
Fight back.
I won't talk. Because, you see, when you look at, I mean, unless we are being treated like fools, people who are incapable of memory or who read and don't understand, there is no way you can resurrect Baffa Koto as a Democrat. There's no way. And to my brother Koseprat, I was just saying that separating real Akoto from political Akoto is just the legal understanding of how that case has influenced subsequent development.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, that's just what I'm saying.
But
I'm not saying the decision was wrong. The decision was, I mean,
but
I was explaining to somebody. I was explaining to somebody that when we criticize this government, especially the nomination of the what's his name, the special prosecutor, people say, but that's the law. I said, but you've forgotten that PDA was a law. You've forgotten. It was a law. You understand? So let's separate it. The moral justification or the moral stance that Baffa Koto fought tyranny cannot be true by any stretch of imagination. Because at that time that he was launching his attacks, there was multi-party democracy. That was how come that SD, what's the name? Dombo. who was a minority leader in parliament, ceded his position to Buze to become minority leader. If there was no multi-party democracy, how could that happen? I mean, we could not rewrite history.
But Kwame, I see that a lot of people want copies of this book.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we should do immediately is to call the Freedom Bookshop
Right.
and to ask them to bring a few copies here, so that those who want to come to Pan Africa and get copies of the book can do so.
Right.
You know, so I mean, there's a small contribution to the discussion.
Yes.
But Elvis wants this, so
Elvis, we will have that conversation. We'll have that conversation. But you see, for those of you coming to, I'll give you. Should I give my A-list number out? Yes. A-list number out as well. So for those who want to go to the Freedom Center, can ask for directions to the place.
it's a Freedom Bookshop, but they can ask for directions from Ayele.
Yeah. If you are coming to Pan African TV, call Justice Appear 0240-748-782. 0240-748-782. If you are going to the Freedom Bookshop, call now on 0249-262132. I'll give you the numbers again before we jet out of here. But let's look at the final. You want to touch on something as well?
No, it's okay.
Oh, no, but I'll give it to you. I'll give it to
No,
you.
I think that we've spoken about important topics.
Yeah,
Only
so-
head we're going to
No,
discuss.
but you see, the trainee nurses are also issuing a strong warning to government. I think we should touch on that. Honorable List of Zeni, respectfully, let me start with you on that one.
Well, I have said
Maybe
that.
we just.
I have said that.
Yeah.
You see,
Briefly.
populist stance for the purposes of hoodwinking people for political power will get back at you when you do so. And not to go back and justify the NDC's position on this matter, let me say that agreements are promises and they must be fulfilled. Pacta sunt servanda. Also, agreements must be obeyed or fulfilled. So the president agreed and entered into an understanding with the nurses that he would pacts must be respected. He will pay them allowances every month, and started. In fact, it was those allowances. I remember when we were campaigning in 2016. The nurses will come back and listen to us when we tell them we are going, and they will laugh at us because we had said that we were not going to give them allowances, and the government said they was going to give them allowances. We will talk to them. They will sit down quietly and listen to us. When we tell them we are going, turn back and see. They will laugh at you because they will vote you because you are not going to give them allowances.
Sure.
And now the government got power. Since May of last year, he has not paid them allowances. So they're asking that, they're reminding the president, the allowances that you promised are not coming. So in order to restore the credibility of politicians, I pray that the president will listen to them and send them those allowances because it is he who promised.
Right.
And Bawumia said they could do it and that they are going to pay allowances. So please, I know God is in shit. I mean, we are in deep crisis. And we have been told that we cannot even recruit. Even talking about that, when we accuse...
The state agency.
I saw the letter from the Ministry of Finance. It's fake.
But you can.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I've seen the response. Actually.
It's
I think
fake. It's fake. The ministry says it's not coming from them.
Okay, then that's
And
okay.
government knows nothing about it.
Oh, then that's okay. That's okay.
I'm sure it's from you people. Actually.
You're done.
I'm done. We're saying that government must respect the agreement you entered into.
Right. Patrick is saying that he thinks Pan African TV should create a sales desk just for selling Nkrumah's books so that individuals can pass by. We have the Freedom Bookstore, and that is in. They have all the books.
It's near
Every
Apollo
book.
Theatre in
Circle, around Circle. So yeah, and you can call the number that I gave to you for directions. Elvis.
No,
Briefly.
trainee nurses have a legitimate concern to the extent that, it is their entitlement to be giving allowances. If they are reminded to government, their warning to government is that they want these monies paid. I want to appeal to them that some of us share in their concern. It's legitimate and it must be done. Government must listen to them. We gave the promise on the heels of good faith, and we have shown good commitment, enormous commitment thus far, to at least doing better. I recall that some 198 million cedis was used to pay these arrears. And if there have been accumulations again, I think that it is only fit and proper for government, the Minister of Finance, and Ghana Health Service to look into what the situation is, so that the poor masses who depend, I know people from rural Ghana, I know people from Nadoli, I know people from Tangasia, I know people from Kaleo, I know people from Binduri, I know people from Boko who actually depend on these allowances, not only for their feeding and other services, but actually also for the payment of their fees, because they do not even have breadwinners who can fund. This year alone, just 2020, in fact 2021 this January, I have paid for fees for several students going into nurses training colleges. So the essence of the allowances, it's good if the economy is good enough to support it. So if government realized that as a promise, there were bases to be able to return to the regime of allowances for trainee nurses, then it is something that must not be in rhetoric, but must be done in a manner that support them in the way they deserve it. Look, they are going into writing their exams. Just last week, the Jirapa Nurses Training College gave a deadline of 13th April, and later moved it to 20th April. If you do not pay fees, you can't even sit for the end of semester exams, which is just by the corner. We had to be running up and down, students calling you here and there for assistance, and they have legitimate concerns. Maybe if these allowances were paid prior to the notice, most of them would have been able to pay to sit for this exam. So it's a legitimate call, and in the interest of those with humble beginnings such as mine, those with financially poor backgrounds such as mine, it is in the interest of these groupings that government consider what the bottlenecks are and to run into quick force. And I know that is being worked into. The ministry will communicate pretty soon in respect of these allowances. So it's a good call. Right. And I stand with the trainee nurses.
Thank you. Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, allowances which are paid are no allowances. You understand? So if you promise to pay nurses, trainees the allowances and you are not paying them, then not the same situation. I was a bit, you know, I felt hilarious when I listened to the head of the Ghana Health Service telling the trainee nurses that, oh, they should be lucky that this government reinstituted the allowance. So even if they are not paying, at least they have reinstituted. I said, what is this? If you are not paying allowance, the allowance doesn't exist. So they should be go and pay it and let's be free, master.
Thank you very much. I'm done. My business is finished. Thank you, Elvis Wutta. Thank you, Honorable Inisa Fuseni. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Finally, for those of you who want a copy of this book, in fact, I know you want a copy of this book, go to the Freedom Book Shop close to Apollo Theatre, a Circle, or if you want to come to Pan-African Television, call Justice Appiah for directions, 0240748782. It's very, very affordable. I mean, in fact, I won't say it. Elvis, I'll give you this copy. Thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a nice day. Salute. Bye.
Hello?
Oh, Sisiana sound.
Okay, why? Hey, my wife comes and send a message. Hello? What's happened?
It's a child who will be a quiet, say, what?